Welcome to the London Architecture Series in behalf of the Museum of London and the London Society of Architects. We are happy that you guys are here. Our speaker tonight is Ted Watson. He is partner of the MGMA firm in Toronto. Ted is a registered architect in Ontario and also in Alberta. He's also a member of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada, and he is as well a lead accredited professional. Let me introduce you, Ted.
Thank you. So I've started my clock. I've been told to have an hour, and I want to respect your time and stay on track. As mentioned, I'm a partner at MacLennan Jaunkalns Miller Architects in Toronto, and our focus is community buildings. We've been going since 1988. Our first project was an aquatic facility, recreation facility in Kitchener-Waterloo, the Grand River Recreation Center. And that was a competition that we won. And really we've been doing community buildings, sport and rec facilities ever since. And we've evolved into other types of public buildings, community-based buildings, academic institutions, and high-performance sport venues and the like in other areas. But our primary focus has always been recreation complexes and the multi-use ones, particularly that bring all different types into them. It's really a pleasure to be here and a privilege, and we do a number of presentations, and they're often to Parks and Rec boards or like yourself to client groups for the architects. And so the discussion is always very focused on certain needs of those groups. And tonight I wanted to really focus the discussion so it's more about the pure design concepts, even philosophical approach to the design of some of these buildings. So in thinking about how to approach that, I asked the question, why? Why do we do what we do? Why do our clients want to do what they're doing? And so in a way, what are the values at the heart of what we do? And our office really believes in community, and we know our clients do. And that's what we're all really trying to achieve. And community is this greater thing that strengthens people and groups and reaches out and makes connections within the community and also to other communities. And I think we always try and retain sight when we get caught up in the design and the architecture and all of the technical bits, that we're really creating armatures for people to use and to strengthen their relationships with others and benefit from it and create healthy, vibrant, socially and economically sustainable communities. And now we believe that, okay, within that, good design can really transform communities. Now, of course, if a client has $30 million and they're going to make a recreation facility, that is going to improve the quality of that community, absolutely. As architects, and given our toolbox, what can we do to actually make that the best space that we can, and to exceed expectations on what those buildings, those facilities can do for the community? So how do we think about that? And I wanted to just make 4 kind of points that we focus on, and it's not that we have it up on the board and say focus on these. It took me a long time to come up with these 4 points, but they seem to reappear in all of our projects. And hopefully, as we go through, I have 5 projects to show you. As we go through, we can see how those are actually used and employed within each of the projects. So the first one is to create civic buildings. So hockey rinks, for instance, are a lot of people spend a lot of time in hockey rinks, a lot more than performing arts centers or city halls, and yet they're viewed in a different way, certainly from a budget perspective and from the approach that people take to them from the outset. But they're important civic buildings where people spend a lot of time and learn and grow and make those connections. So I think we need to make sure that each building has a social heart, an important public realm within it, an important public realm outside of it, and that it also connects to the urban fabric of the city and brings the city into it. So create civic buildings, clear and simple planning. You know, if you can come up with a party diagram and through the entire process of clients and budgets and contractors and approvals, have that read at the end is architecture, I think that's a great achievement in and of itself. And I think coming up with that clear planning, I think you need to solve two sort of critical design challenges or questions, is what we find on each project. And one relates to the site, is what are the critical design challenges for this site? And what are the critical design challenges for the programming? And everyone seems to have to be unique, and it takes a while to figure them out and a lot of exploration. But if your diagram, if your planning can, you know, I think respond to those two things, and then it can be clear at the end, I think that's what we strive to do. Design with natural light. So natural light has a transcendent quality, and it makes people want to spend more time in buildings. And we try and use it as the source to plan the building, to create the heart of the building, to make a building clear and how you use it. And with Sport and Rec, a lot of the activity spaces, the light needs to be controlled. You can't have glare in pools, etc. But bringing that light in is something that we focus on a lot. And then finally, transparent, open, and welcoming. So, you know, within these facilities, we try and make the activity spaces, they're transparent to everyone. So whether you're a spectator or a user, you're actually feeling like you're part of what's going on. And that extends to the outside. So if you're even driving by, walking by, you get a sense of what the building is. The building is welcoming you. And that, in a sense, becomes its identity, its branding, that strengthens its community focus. So 5 community buildings. So Brampton Soccer Center, talking about Brampton, it's the 9th largest city in Canada, but a huge area, and it's been expanding in the last 20 years very rapidly. And a lot of the farmland to the northwest has been opened up to Caledon. And so there's been a lot of development, suburban development, and through that, development charges. And of course, then these cities needed to provide infrastructure and community-based buildings. And we received a commission for a rec center at Dixie and Sandalwood Road at the head of the 410 extension. And the area on the left is at that time was all farmland. It's all suburban housing now, but at the time it really was on the periphery of the city. And to their credit, the planning and design department at the city of Brampton was really interested in creating urban, recognizing that this is a very suburban place where there's fast-moving traffic. They were very focused on creating urban responses with their public buildings. They had a system of bike paths and natural waterways that they wanted to tie into. The other element that was notable, so that was the kind of programmatic challenge, was that talking about Brampton, you need to talk about the demographics. It's been, in the last 20 years, it's entirely changed. It's a much younger population, a lot of new families, a lot of recent immigration into the community, a lot of South Asian population. So what historically, and in fact what this building started out was as a quad pad arena. By the time it got to an RFP, it became more of a multi-purpose recreation, but it still had that Canadian ice in there. And then By the time we finished the project, it was a 4-pad soccer center of excellence. So it actually evolved, but through the process, there was an understanding that it could be infinitely flexible and adaptable through its life. And that's, I think, one of the key issues in terms of the programming on this site. In terms of the site plan, then, we needed to understand how we could take a huge building, which is, a 4-pad arena is a huge, bulky building, and break that down to make connections to a suburban site that has an urban feel that fosters civic space. So this is our site, and you can see the building placement. And it was very simple. If you look at a quad pad, there's only so many arrangements of those boxes, and we basically turned one as twin pads, and we shifted it to create these 2 spaces that you can see here. That one creates a corner site condition that was an urban park on the corner and became a landmark urban space, as it were. And then to the inside of the site, we created a forecourt for arrival that fed into the other 4 outdoor playing fields. And the organization of the site then was right through the building, and it tied the sidewalks, the green system, you see the naturalized drainage channel, the parking, the playing fields, all tied together within the partie of the building. So the site was really structured off of that idea. And then looking at the plan, here you see your typical twin pad arenas with change rooms and bleachers at the upper levels, with the service space at the back. And in this diagram then of these shifted and twisted boxes, we have the 2 soccer fields, but on each side we have an arrival court and a community court that's created by that shifting. And we have a community space and a lobby space that relate to both of those. And then on the perimeter of the site, we have these screened service areas. So we're now putting the service areas on the perimeter of the site at the roadways. So how do we deal with that, was the question. In terms of the movement through the building, it actually concentrated the access to the 4 pads very closely in the lobby space, but then allowed that transverse corridor to connect to the civic space on the corner of the site. And looking at the design of the building, we had the boxes, kept them very simple, but the community element and the lobby element became these kind of lower roof structures that had these high volumes that represented entry and connected through light the corridor, this transverse corridor between the 2 outdoor spaces. And here you can see the main entrance to the building. And we can see these high volumes, which are actually beacons that mark entry and connect through to the back of the site. And that's the main lobby space, and the use of wood throughout the building. And here we can see this is the forecourt, the drop-off. So it's a garden space that connects out into the site. And this is on the other side, the civic forecourt space with splash pads and playgrounds and whatnot. It has the same entrance piece as you arrive with the community rooms on that face. And in fact, I just want to go back to this diagram and point out that because of the plan, it turned out there was 6 facades, and the way we treated them was we treated them as pairs, so there was 3 pairs, and that they were actually identical. So you have the parking lot facades, you have the street facades, and you have the forecourt facades. And we'll look at each of those. These are the forecourt facades. Oops, I'm going backwards. Forecourt facades, and then through the plan of the site, how do we make all of this work on the budget we had? The entire project, including site, was completed at $180 a square foot. So it was tight, and we had to make it work. So we treated the building really as a warehouse structure. It was all repetitive. The boxes were dead simple, and it was only the edges that really we elaborated. And it's really this cross section. if we close up on it, we can see where those points are. So we focused the design efforts on the places that we felt it would have the most impact on the exterior and through the center. And in the end, the planning resulted in a facility that was flexible and could be infinitely convertible into different programs. And in fact, they put in a basketball, which wasn't even planned for this, but the building was designed, the interior finishing was designed for indoor soccer. The functionality, the mechanical was designed for hockey, and the height was designed for volleyball. So it was very flexible and convertible in the future, depending on how the demographics would shift in the neighborhood. So here's a view of the building on site as it's going up. Repetitive trusses, the same truss throughout the 4 boxes. And it's really, here's a view of the cladding. That's just your standard Vic West corrugated metal exterior, and then we added some angles, both vertically and horizontally, really just to capture the light and play off that facade. It was a metallic silver, and it kind of, when the light hit it in different days, it would change. So a very cost-effective envelope that we could apply around the entire building as a system. And here you see, as you enter into the lobby space at the parking lot end, the use of wood that comes indoors, and you can see the clarity of circulation. There was a very studious application of AODA accessibility requirements to the floor. The city was very interested in making that happen. So a lot of the floor patterns we developed based off of requirements for the accessibility. You can see at the stairs and elsewhere. Organization of the mechanical and servicing areas within the ceiling space, within the woodwork. And then here's the transverse corridor. And in terms of organizing with natural daylight, in a way this is almost the heart of the building, because it brings that light down. It connects between the 2 main spaces of the site, and then there's all this transparency. So there's sharing of the different activities within the space, and you're actually walking through the center. It's kind of like when you're in those aquariums that have the sharks on either side. You're kind of going through all of these soccer games that are happening, so you can't help but feeling part of the activities. And that's the view down the community corridor, lower scale, but again, using light to guide you through that space, and the judicious use of wood in those community areas. This is a view from the upper level that shows the transparency between the 2 different facilities. And the use of just graphics, this is just, as we call in the office, liquid pigment is our finish in here. So it's just painted graphics on the pre-engineered wall surface. And again, even the decal for the glazing is a sort of a soccer ball, an exploded soccer ball decal. Some of the views out to the community space. And here we're on the exterior. So these are the facades to the street, and they're in 2 parts. One is a kind of a bay window that's a hooded bay window to the street on the north and the west. And you can see on the outside the views that allow for this transparency to come into the facility. So as you're driving by in Sandalwood or Dixie, you can see at night what's happening in the facility, and it animates the street and creates a vibrancy. And concrete garden walls were used, in this case, with slots through them to shield the service areas, the garbage, the transformer areas. And that's what that looks like from the street, from the naturalized drainage channel in the street across the way, with a view to the right of the civic court. And then the parking lot facades were actually the ones you see from a distance, and they were the ones that you primarily arrived to the site. So we wanted them to read almost as billboards of what was happening on the site on a large scale, because they're the first thing you see as you're driving, and also within the parking lot. But we also needed, because they're north and west, to control the daylight within that space. So we used this louver system and incorporated a signage system to work with that. And as well, the city was very interested in branding the facility with the Brampton blue, and we incorporated some glazing panels that also protected the light going into that space. And that's another view from the south parking lot. So, Commonwealth Community Recreation Center and the Edmonton Eskimo Fieldhouse. This is a project that we started in 2008, and it had to be operational in 2010 for the Grey Cup. So we had, which was good, you know, to have a good schedule is always a good motivator. The city, somewhat like Brampton, has a lot of revenue coming into it, so they're providing a series of 5 recreation complexes. And unlike here, complexes there are range between $100 and $150 million. That's Alberta dollars, so it's somewhat inflated, but the scale of these facilities are much larger than what we're familiar with here. Our project was it was the second one, and it was closest to the city. So you see the downtown, and it was one stop off of the subway tracks. So, you know, it's a great location, but it was sort of a marginalized site that is the home of the 1978 Commonwealth Outdoor Stadium, which is really a heroic and magnificent structure. But it had fallen into disrepair, this site, and it was really had become, you know, much like event spaces that are, you know, not in use throughout the year. It had become abandoned. It had become, you know, vagrant and drug use. So it was an unsafe place, and the community, I should say as well, it's also got this sort of pizza slice shape to it, and is really the resolution of 3 grids come together on that site, which, you know, really drove the planning as well. And in terms of the kind of fabric around the building, we had the Eskimos office nearby. They wanted to be part of this structure. They had money for a field house, but they also wanted to be part of the stadium. We see the stadium concourse, which is this great precast stadium. And then light industry happening along the LRT line. And then these are typical residents. They were little wartime houses. So it was a distressed neighborhood, identified as such, and it needed a shot in the arm. And so one of the, I guess, the site challenge for us is how do you repair this neighborhood? How do you make these connections and animate this space and make strong connections into the facility? And in terms of the programming, the challenge that we had on this was we had these 3 groups. So there was stadium operations. During the construction, U2 played there, and there was, I think, 100 semi-trucks that went in and out of that space. So, you know, that's typical a few times a year. The Eskimos are playing there as well, large events, and they're going to be part of this facility. And then you have the community who, you know, swim lessons and kids soccer and fitness and whatnot. So how do you bring these 3 groups together? And more importantly, how do you make the whole greater than the sum of the parts, where everybody's, you know, there's synergies so that the programming overlaps, is flexible, and people are getting more than they actually bargained for. So the project started with this existing rec center, which you can see the gym there, but then on the front side there was a series of racquetball courts all facing into the stadium with concrete walls. So you know, clearly it wasn't the greatest use of that space. So and it was 3 levels. So we adapted. The other thing I should say is there was this marathon. They called it the marathon ramp. For the Commonwealth Games, the marathon came in and out, but really it's the service ramp, and it's critical to the functioning of the stadium. However, it created this trough that further isolated this site from the urban from the streetscape. So, in placing the large field house, pool, and other elements, the major programs on the site, we did that so that we could organize a space in the center. And the city, you know, I think they were very forward thinking in that every site they developed had to have a social heart on the site, and indoors and also outdoors on the site. So and so that's their terminology, social heart, and I think it's a very good one. So the response to the site then was basically we followed the alignment to reconcile these grids, and then we brought the planning through the building to connect the neighborhoods and to connect to the LRT stop. And we created 3 separate entrances to feed into this social heart, so that it wasn't, the scale of this building wasn't creating more obstruction in terms of the use of the site. And we also then created an event plaza out front that was at the scale of the site. So it's parking, it's also an event space. And then made the rest of the site basically garden buffer, while appreciating that there's a lot of people on this site during game days and events. In terms of sustainability, we had a daylighting concept of skylights and clear story lights throughout the facility, dimmable zone lighting control to adapt to those the natural light that's coming in. Triple glazing in Edmonton made a lot of sense, particularly at around the aquatic facility, with ceramic FRIT to modulate the sun and the glare, and then a southern canopy at the front of the building. And we also had natural ventilation through the field house, so there was no air conditioning in that space, and it's naturally ventilated. And then finally a solar wall that preheats the air that comes in. So even if it's minus 30, you're getting a 20-degree increase in the heat that's coming into the space. Planning and programming. The section, actually, the stadium is, the field is 2 to 3 stories below the street level. So we were working with the existing structure here and gym, and we needed to interconnect all of them, the ESKIMOS primarily in here, through 4 levels. And so we did a lot of both computer models and physical models to look at how to tie into the stadium and how to make this ramp work and the forecourt space. And also from an architectural perspective is how can you take what are very different size pieces and tie them together as a legible singular object that functions at the scale of this site. I mean, the stadium is a heroic and iconic piece of architecture, and so we felt we needed to bring everything together to create a large and dynamic form to compose with it. And we looked at how to arrange that social heart space as a double height space with fitness and studios. And then from the stadium side, we looked at what's the expression of the building on that side. And what I'm going to do is actually quickly go through each of the levels, starting at the stadium level. The Eskimo locker room, we pushed out part of that space right to the track to create the locker room space. And this is the service ramp and the access space that we actually were able to make larger and more functional for them. The Eskimo box seating space on top of the locker room on the second level, and on the inside is the coaching and the team rooms where they would meet. But these rooms also functioned as community spaces, and for larger events, they were the hosting spaces for concerts and whatnot. So this level could really function as a multi-purpose for all the users, as did the gym. Game day, this is the Green and Gold Club. Concerts, it's a hosting venue, and then the rest of the time, people are shooting hoops. Out front, the forecourt space at the level 3, and then this is the social heart, the lobby space. And then from above, looking down from the fitness area, you can see there's a series of community rooms that are scattered throughout that lobby level. The aquatic hall, where we start to see that wood coming into the space. And then this is the change room, the universal change room with diffuse natural light at the back of the level 3, the field house, upper level running track at the 4th floor, and fitness and weight room as well. So we had Eskimos working out in there along with everyone else, and it was very interesting. Aerobic rooms. And so this is a view from the front of the building, and you can see the stadium to the right in the background, and the black triangular shape is actually the top of the field house, which is a much larger form coming up, and it's represented as the solar wall with the Pradima wood cladding on the inside, creating this warm canopy. And it was important to create this canopy that was at the scale of this event space, which was also a parking lot for arrival. And you can see the fitness at the upper level all looking out, and they have a great view of the downtown actually from that level. And to the right, the pool. And then within the lobby space, we see centralized natural light. We started with 23 skylights and we ended up with 4. So they a lot of them got value engineered out, but these were really, at the end, I think it was a good exercise because it focused the light where we wanted it. And through the skylights to the back, to the stadium. This is the information desk, and clients always ask us, we need a big sign for the information, so we thought it would be fun to actually put it in the ceiling like this. It's the biggest information sign we know of. And this is a pool, the pool, and you can see the acoustic wood walls and the expression of that wood coming onto the inside, which becomes the stair, post-shade stair space for the slide that's in the corner of the prow of that building. And there you can see the use of ceramic FRIT on both sides of the pool and elsewhere, partially for solar gain, but also for privacy, to create something of a veil between the people arriving at the entrance of the building. And then the stair is within skin, so it's actually controlling the space up and down, the use of the fitness area, and you can see down to the gym and out to the field house or the stadium beyond. That's that stair. We used a material called Fundermax that was milled, and we actually came to that because it was cheaper than any other solution we could come up with. We started with a glass and perforated metal and ended up with this. Aerobic studio and views into the field house with precast casual seating for spectators. And then here you can see in the field house the natural ventilation fans at the top. And on the other side are triple hung windows. So the entire west side of the building opens up to the practice field outdoor and also to the community promenade that connects the community. So events, game days, those doors are open and people can flow inside and out. And this was Grey Cup. You can see the plywood on one side. We'd only built the field house, but they had the big party in the Grey Cup. So you can see a lot of Saskatchewan jerseys down there. And this is a view at the track level, and you can see beyond to the stadium beyond. This is fitness at the track, fitness space at the track level, which is part of one of the entrance spaces. And there was concern for glass on the site because of the ills of the site, that it would be broken, etc. But these are applying SEPTED principles, and there's been no problem on the site, and it's actually been a great entrance for people to use from the community and from the rear parking lot. And then from the stadium, you can see the branding of the interior of the stadium. And there are the 3 levels: the Eskimo locker room, the coaching rooms, and the administration tiered on the back side of the stadium that can also be used for many other things. And that's a view from the bleachers. There's usually more fans at the game, but it was just, we wanted to catch the light at the end of the day, and I think there was a few seconds left in I can't remember the score, but it was worth leaving at that time. Regent Park Aquatic Center. So some of you might be familiar with what's happening in downtown. And just to give you a sense of the scale of this redevelopment, it must be one of the largest redevelopments in the world. That's the downtown core Toronto, and that's the Regent Park development over the 3 phases. And our site is the little rectangle, which is here. And this is a street view of Regent Park, 1942. And there's a long history to Regent Park, but it was a Victorian, it became a slum, so it was very small scale. And in fact, if you're in Cabbagetown, it was a lot like that. But it had become a real slum, and there was a determination to fix it. And by 1957, using the Garden City model, a social housing scheme came into effect, and that's our site, our current site today. And in fact, the scheme advanced further and took up the entire area. And what resulted in that was a disconnection of the actual street grid. space. They took out some of the streets so that they're walking streets, garden spaces. But I think we're all familiar with what that's resulted in. So connection was really important in terms of the revitalization. And down below, there were some very nice Peter Dickinson apartments that were built in the 60s as well, but they're also under the wrecking ball. But you see to the right, those are kids who are protesting to try and get the outdoor swimming pool. It says, "Where's our pool money?" over here. So there was an outdoor pool that was built, and it was well loved in the community. And in fact, when we were designing the new aquatic center, what we heard a lot, because there was a lot of consultation, is we wanted to feel like an outdoor pool. We wanted to, still have that quality. This is Regent Park today. The last 20 years, it's moved from European immigrants to what is more recent immigrants, and it's really become a transitional neighborhood. So there's a lot of distress. 50% of the residents are under the poverty line. So a lot of crime, and which has led to this revitalization. That and the fact that it's a great location for new housing, and so it's going to be a combination of mixed use and affordable housing. Here's an early massing study of the Phase 1 Regent Park redevelopment, and at the center is a new park, and within that would be our building. So our response then is, and the question we asked ourselves is, how do we make a building in a park where there's very little park space? How do we not ruin the park by putting a building in it? And how do we also be urban and respond to the street system? And in terms of the kind of programming question, with all these new immigrants and in the neighborhood, a diverse mix of race and culture, how do you create a swimming pool which culturally is difficult? Questions of nudity, of exposed skin, of different mixing of gender is a big issue, along with the notions of crime within this area. How do we address those, but also how do we make it exceed expectations as a facility? So looking at the site then, the response to that, the figure ground shows the proposed buildings and the existing buildings. And it was a 6-acre site. And we were given the west side of the site. And connections through the site were important. And through the planning of the park, which we did the preliminary work on, we came up with the idea that there's a number of amenities, playgrounds and markets around the park, and that the center would have a central active space, which would really be the heart and open space of the park. And we felt it was important that the aquatic center really address that central park space. Rather, the city was pushing us towards a corner building that registered the corner, and we felt it was more important that this was a pavilion building, but that it registered the street, the urban street edge. So we took the approach that we wanted to have the most transparent and open aquatic area that really opened to the park and felt like an extension of the park, felt like that outdoor pool. And so we placed all of the dark programming on the street side, on the Sackville side, and we then, in interest of creating a dynamic street presence, we created the most transparent and nice corridor, dry corridor that we could come up with, and then we perforated this bar as much as we could to allow for those penetrating views and interconnections. So this is the first facility in Canada that went fully to universal change facility. So there's no male or female washrooms or change rooms in the facility at all. And what it is a central bank of toilets and showers with cubicles for changing and lockers. And it's actually very virtual. It's glass on all sides. And in the end, this is the kind of circulation, movement, and sight lines that you get through the building. And so looking at the massing, the earlier model shows this bar being expressed, by the end it became more of a singular gesture that, you know, it kind of tied together and almost became a subtractive volume that was carved versus additive and built up. Just a diagram that shows all of the different elements throughout the building. And the central skylight, well, this site plan then shows how the roofscape actually became the fifth elevation of the building, and the green roof on top really needed to address what people were seeing from these high rises and also tie into the landscape design at the base. And this is an early model that shows, you know, the green roof and how we attempted to make that happen. And a longitudinal section which shows how the west face actually lowers down to block out the harsh western light that's coming in. And a cross section through the building that, you know, shows this lower section on the west, and then a lot of glass and transparency to the north, very good light, and then we're dropping light in from the top. And we call this the dorsal fin of the building that really ran the length of the building and allowed for that connection to come through. And then the change room is a lower space that allows for the mechanical systems to be screened up above it, and then there's that dry corridor along the eastern face of the building. And here's a section that shows that dorsal fin skylight that runs the length of the building and how we paired the mechanical with the structure to bring the mechanical system through that space. And here's a view from the high rise across the street and from the roof that shows the green roof actually interconnects. We haven't got the final photography on this yet, but it connects with the blue lines of light in the glazing so that it really does become a studied elevation from above. And this is the view from the south that shows the access into the building. So very transparent, very welcoming, very warm. The use of wood really glows. Is often in many of our projects when we can afford to incorporate it. Inside, it's a very tight lobby space actually, but because it's part of that higher vaulted skylight, it doesn't feel too constricted. And slatted wood that's acoustic on the inside of the aquatic facility. We see here the slide and the Tarzan rope and the slide diving board. So there's a lot of fun activities for youth, which is really important in aquatic facilities, not just kids, not just seniors. You got to try and animate those spaces for the Middle Ages. And then here we see a view down the length out to Dundas Street. We see the streetcar going by very often. And then there's the quality of light at midday. So the light changes as it moves through that skylight, which is facing directly south. And you can see through the change rooms here from pool to street, from park to street. You can see this building is perforated. And then moving outdoors, there's a sunbathing terrace with 3 bays of sliding glass that open up to the exterior. And moving around the building to the east side, when we went to the design review committee, they were very concerned that this was a too monolithic, this elevation. And so we really focused on, well, okay, let's make it bold and monolithic and keep that, but let's make it as, finely detailed as we can. And this is moving down the length, and you can see into those universal change rooms from the sidewalk. And we see the glass going up right to the parapet, and the cladding actually moves in and out, a dry design zinc, black zinc. And this change room then, you can see to the left you can see into the universal change rooms, and you can see a column here. And we see light that's concealed below the precast bench that runs into our outdoor, and light concealed above the glass container of the universal change room above. And there's no structure or mullions on that side of the corridor. So we can see the column here. The structure then is suspending and is supporting the glass from above as well as the parapet. So there's a bit of gymnastics, but we felt that was an important thing to achieve so that this glass could be butt jointed and we didn't have to upgrade to a heavier gauge of glass to achieve that. And this is a view through the universal change room, and you can see, to the park, you can see to the street. And looking back from the aquatic side, these strips of frosted are actually where the blinds come together so that we can achieve a lockdown of those change rooms so they can be fully usable by different genders. And in fact, the entire pool has blinds that come down so that the pool space is completely private, addressing different cultural and gender issues, Muslim swims, women's swims. It's also very close to the LGBT community, so these universal change rooms have been extremely well received, for reasons of privacy and safety. And in fact, we presented at a Parks and Rec once, and someone said afterwards that you've created a candy store for pedophiles. But in fact, it's to the contrary, and we were really fortunate at that actual presentation. The client was there, the director of aquatics at City of Toronto, and this has actually become their standard. These are the safest change rooms they've ever had, the least amount of incidents of any of their facilities. And part of the reason is that male, female, anybody can survey these spaces, and it really comes back to SEPTED type principles where people's behavior is moderated as there's more eyes on them. So this has been very successful from the city's point of view. From the park side, we can see the relationship to the park. There's these blue glass wedges that respond to the geometries of the building and the slide, and then there's a kind of a sprinklered area, a splash pad out front. And here we see from the park how the building is really luminous. It becomes a backdrop, an urban backdrop to the eastern edge of the site, but it's also pavilion-like in that it feels like an extension of the park. And this is a view from the corner showing the entrance as well. And I just wanted to show this, coming back to what we started with, is this is number 11 reason in 2013 of reasons to love Toronto, and we need as many reasons as we can. But this one, it says, because a pool changed the neighborhood. And in fact, this is what it looks like most of the time, not like the architect's photos. It's actually chaos in there most days, which is great. Centennial College, Ashtonby Campus Renewal and Library. So Ashtonby Campus, Centennial College has 4 campuses, basically through Scarborough. And the Ashtonby campus was the last to receive any upgrade. There was a lot of great new buildings on the Progress and other campuses that have been developed, but the Ashtonby campus was really lagging behind. Basically anything on land, sea, and air, these guys can fix it. They're trained to fix it, and that's what happens on this site. It's like it's a huge shop class, but there's also, they've introduced a lot of different programming. So there's actually a bit of a diversity of people and mix on the site, but primarily transportation. So the question that we were addressing for the site is how, if we were asked to introduce a new building to the site, and how can that site organize the site for the future? And then programmatically, how can the building become a branding identity for the site? How can it express what's happening on this campus outwardly and make connections outwardly? So looking at the site, it's just off Eglinton Avenue at Warden, and there's 2 buildings on the site, the Ashtonby building and the automotive building, formerly a VW factory. And the campus started up around the late 50s, and the new building we were proposing for the site, we put at the front of the campus. And although we were to introduce key student amenities, it also had to have this outward representation or identity to the street, to the community. There were 19 stakeholder groups and user groups involved that we consulted with to develop the programming, which was new build and renovation. There was a social hub at the ground floor, student center at the ground, student services. A second floor plan consisted of the new library space. and then a new gymnasium and a refurbished gymnasium with a top-up of a fitness on top, and then a series of renovations, interior renovations, all within asbestos-ridden old building. And then, so we started then with a master plan. There was some master planning developed by others, and we really took that further. And there was a tunnel that connected the building that's very unsatisfactory of the two existing buildings. So one of the issues that the college had is, how do we plan for the future? How can we make these connections to the future? And so they also had, there was a smart center went in front of the building, and a new intersection was placed on the site. And how do we align with that new access point on the site? So we introduced a pedestrian walkway and a new drop-off and access point that was aligned with the intersection. And we also placed the building at the front and, in effect, created a bridge system and put the fitness at the center of the site. And then, we planned for what could happen in the future. There are plans to develop this space, and potentially this interior space, the parking space, could become developed as well, and to create a series of courtyards within that space. So the concept then we used was one of bridging, both a figurative and literal bridging on the site. And we took the college's, what they call their book of commitments, which is their strategic plans, their goals, and we tried to interpret those into urban, architectural, and programming moves that we could do in the design of this project. And so the first one was a very literal idea about just bridging over between the buildings and making these connections, and importantly, allowing the future connections to their existing facilities. Second one was, how do we bridge to the community, create this branding, this connection, transparency, this welcoming gesture that brought people in and let them know what was happening? How do you bridge, create spaces that can bridge between students within the college that you design for diversity and accessibility? And how can you connect staff and faculty inside and out? And then new models of pedagogy. Particularly in the library, Centennial College had developed a couple of very nice libraries recently, and we were able to take a lot of the concepts that were developed there and take them further with the librarian group and develop spaces that adapted to the ways of learning that they had that they were interested in. And then how do you bridge new and old models of campus planning? This is the annual show and shine that they have every year. There's a lot of hot rods in sight, and they pop the hood. And then this is it's in Toronto, but it's sort of an Oxbridge example of campus planning. So how do you bring those two things together in the site? How do we represent the culture of the automotive, of transportation? And we started thinking about, how do you arrive on the site, and how do you see that arrival from within the building on site, and how does the site then become an armature for displaying what it is that's being done within the school. So this is the before shot, and clearly they were disturbed by the lack of presence that their school had and the fact that nobody knew they existed. And so we proposed to bring this building out to the front and make it very transparent and open. And in the end, these are photographs under construction, but this is what it looks like. At night, you can see it's very integrated with the front of the building. And in terms of the cladding system, the envelope, we started thinking about this as a gateway, and that it was a KINETIC experience. This is Cloud Gate in Chicago, the Holland Tunnel, and the kind of fetish quality of engines, of chrome engines. And so we went with a stainless steel cladding system that allowed us to have 2 inches of movement on either side of a rectangle. So it allowed for this really interesting and dynamic surface. And we applied that to the end walls, but also the underside of the facility. So as you move through, it's sort of a kaleidoscope that reflects the movement that's happening within the space. And here you see the light well and the entrance into the space. And then the glazing, which was triple glazing to meet the energy modeling requirements, We used a ceramic FRIT that actually modeled the truss system of the building. There's 4 trusses that ran the length of the building, and the FRIT captures that. But it also allowed for a branding moment with Centennial College. And here you see there's a central atrium space that's actually a courtyard that's suspended, so it's open to above and it's open to below. And again, using natural daylight to organize the building. There you see it from below, and above you see the negative of the Centennial that's 50 meters on its length, which the college was very happy with. At night, it somewhat disappears. But you can see everything inside, and you can see, through the building. And I think it very much integrates with it's almost a piece of infrastructure in and of itself. And in terms of the planning, then the pedestrian entry, also the fire route access runs the entire length of the site. We come into what is a complete street idea where we're using bollards, benches, trees to actually define the vehicular pathway. So people are slowing down, there's speed bumps, and there's more of a mix, a European sort of model of a forecourt space. And then we're bringing people into a new front door on the right and then into the new student hub on the left. And then we're moving around the suspended atrium space up a public space. We call it Spanish Steps, but there's around the central circulation space, and that looks like this, still under construction, but you get the sense of it. So that's where you wait to sign up for your courses, but it also is an informal lecture theater, study space, etc. So it's flexible, it's open, and it's public realm space within the building. And that's a view down, and to the right, this outdoor atrium space. And so the circulation then is around that space as you move into the library proper. This is a view down the corridor that eventually connects into future buildings and also into their existing building at the upper levels. And you see the quality of light that falls into this space. It's a very popular space for student use. And views out to the back of the Smart Center, which is mostly concealed. The views were not great, so the ceramic FRIT actually creates more of an interior environment. And then there was noisy spaces along that south face that lead into the library, and it was really designed to then filter into and further into the quiet spaces. Here you see the open carrels and the group study rooms, some casual seating as you enter, and then the group study rooms and interior views of those spaces, and casual seating throughout. And this is my last one, so I'm moving a little ahead of time, but University of British Columbia. The UBC is really a city among itself. There's a huge forest that separates it from Vancouver, and they've been busy selling off a lot of that forest, and they've been generating new housing within the university plan, but they've had an incredible expansion over the last decade. And this is a site that we're working on, a new aquatic center, and this is exactly the site. When I left there 25 years ago, this is what's happening. And our site is a field right in the center of it. And this site here, and there's an existing pool, an outdoor pool here. And there's a gym, recreation facility, sub, and a bus terminal. But in the next 6 years, there's going to be an alumni building by KPMB, a new student union building by Dialogue, a pool coming online 2016 by ourselves, a new bus plaza terminal. The pool's taken down, that becomes the new field. Below it is an underground bus terminal. And then housing, market housing and student housing fill in the rest of the site. So we were working with different consultants to generate this secondary plan for this district, which is really the student heart. The design CHALLENEG, excuse the spelling, not my strong suit. So the design challenge was really 7 athletes went to London 2012 from UBC, more aquatic athletes than anywhere in Canada. Meanwhile, they have the largest growing youth population and new family population in the Lower Mainland. And then, of course, how do you integrate the campus life, the student experience, into this new building? So how do you bring those 3 things together? And then how do you work with this kind of ever-changing site to create legible public spaces? This is a view of how it's going to look in the future, and you can see our building in the center there. And from above, the entrance to the pool area. And the thinking was we studied the movement of students through the campus, and we recognized that this new bus terminal, 50% of the student population is going to arrive and leave from this space. So the southern facade of our building became a very important arrival feature, and views into the pool were very important to the campus architect. But for us, also protecting the privacy of the swimmers was important, so we had to find a balance. The cars coming to the north for drop-off for children's facilities. And then along the spine, there's this athlete's way that connects the 5 different athletic centers. So we wanted to support that as a public realm endeavor. And this is a view from above showing the entrance and the 3 outdoor urban spaces. So how does the building tie into those outdoor urban spaces? Like Regent Park, very simple planning that segregated change, community, competition, and spectators. And then the planning rationale moves from below, from the site boundary. As it moves up, we wanted to create public space on 3 sides. And we didn't have the program to make that indoor space, so we created indoor-outdoor space that actually was somewhat ambiguous. As you move up a ramp, you can get access to the spectator bleachers, and the space at the back can actually be closed off, so you can have tents for swim meets, you can have spinning classes outdoors, and you can move in and out of the facility at the spectator level because you're not within the control of the aquatic center. So it addresses 1,000-person competition in the spectator side because they're not using the lobby. The lobby then can be used for children's programming, for kids, for other community-based operations, and the campus can walk around the building and experience within the building, sit in the bleachers, have their lunch, and experience that building from the public realm. There were some great Thompson Birtwick Pratt buildings that are on site, War Memorial Gym, the student union existing student union building, which were very powerful, classical but modern, and that was kind of our cue for the expression of the building. Again, grouping it into simple layers of program and elements, and then pushing and pulling to really modulate the light and to deliver using the slope of the site as well. And that, in the end, is what you see from the arrival from the bus plaza. So it's very virtual, but there's also this ramp that protects the swimmers. There's light that drops to the center of the building with the lobby at the front. This is a view from the field. And you can see up along this athlete's way, the dry corridor is really paralleling that procession and is part of that space. And like Regent Park, it's universal change, so it's perforated. On the north side, this is an Enriquez building to the right. The space in there can be usable by its public space, but then it can be closed down for use by either the recreation center or the aquatic center. And there are these views where you can watch people swim and competitions happen. The planning of the actual building, very simple, like Regent Park, a couple bars, and then down the middle is a skylight that really drops light into the heart of this building where it needs it the most. This was an early study and a rendering to kind of look at how we could do that. And this is from the competition side where we see this is a Barasol screen that filters the light and protects the competition side from the direct light and glare, and can also be used as a projection screen. This kind of looks like the Hunger Games where those people come up in the sky. And then this is on the community side. We see the Tarzan swing and whatnot, and you can play Jaws there at night. This is a view out. You can see the bus there in the bus loop, and a view from the diving board showing the light that's coming down in that skylight area. So it's almost like a tent, and it's all acoustic Hunter Douglas textile, high absorbing acoustic material, so that they can have a competition and kids swim lessons in that space. So although the screen does not create a virtual true separation, it's a virtual separation that signifies two separate spaces within one. And that's the leisure side looking into the lobby. Moving through the universal change, we've actually put the showers on the deck. So people are always looking for more deck space, and they're always looking for people to shower more because it actually saves on the chemicals and all of those things. So by putting the showers on the deck so that people can easily take showers and still be in the change room and have more deck space was kind of a win-win, and it suited our incredibly low budget that we had that allowed us no real space to design with. That's the dry corridor and the lobby space as well. And then finally, the sustainability. This is a LEED Gold building, and UBC is ahead of the curve by 10 years, the rest of Canada. They're very much into regenerative neighborhoods, a lot of different things. And we talked about the daylight and their zone lighting control, but also with the water, the cistern that we designed handles a 1 in 200 year storm. It does gray water flushing. It tops up the pool, which loses 2 inches of water every day through the filtration system. It stores the water when we shut down for maintenance. And there's one more thing it irrigates the landscape around. So it's unlike any other we could find in North America that does anything like this. And then in terms of the ventilation, we're delivering air at low level, and we're actually collecting the air within the gutter system. So we're scouring the surface of the water and collecting the chloramines, and that's where they live, right where the swimmers are breathing. So we're in effect creating a healthy but also high performance air environment within that space. This is a view of from the field at night, and it really becomes a glowing lantern. And then finally, just 4 projects. Dalhousie University Athletic Center, these are projects on the go. This is an athletic facility near the Dowplex, if you're familiar with the campus. Branksome Hall Athletics and Wellness Center, this is opening in January. The Goldring Center for High Performance Sport at U of T, a project with Packhow Architects, is opening this fall. And a hockey facility that we're developing in Calgary, Great Plains Recreation Center. And finally, City of Toronto Bessarion Community Center, which has library, fitness, aquatics, and recreation in a 100,000 square foot facility next to the subway on Lawrence and Shepherd. So that's in design right now. Thank you.
Interesting presentation. We are going to have a little bit of a question and answer, so it's very informal. You can ask that anything you want regarding to the projects. So, go ahead.
Like, how was my drive out here from lots of traffic?
Okay, I'm going to start with that one. I saw that you are very involved with real models in your projects. That is not very often. Mm-hmm. How long goes into the design process on the project?
Well, it's true. Real models have become a bit of a luxury because they are very time consuming, and they're really, you make one and it's hard to reuse it, and you kind of put it aside. And SketchUp has become so commonplace that it's really become the tool in which we're generating a lot of our work, that and Rhino, and we're working in Revit as well. So you're actually working with a model constantly. It's not the same as physical models. They deliver another reading that's really important. So we try and do it, but they do burn up a lot of hours, but we feel like we get a lot of good use out of them.
So a lot of your buildings seem to have sharp or angular forms. There's sort of two questions in that regard. One is, what is sort of the idea, the driving force behind those shapes or forms, and how do you actually get those constructed in sort of the economies that you're trying to work with?
Right. Good question. And there's constantly this debate in the office is, can we afford these angular forms? And so, you can see a lot of these most recent projects are really moving back to the boxes. And in fact, I think the Ashengy project was interesting in that it was a very rectilinear orthogonal building, but it was really only at certain moments that we introduced those geometries because they are expensive. Shape costs money, and so I think we try and assess it at the outset is what can we afford within this within the project. The UBC project, we were said, okay, because we had just Vic and I had just finished the Commonwealth project, and which is very angular, and it was went through the Rhino and Grasshopper machine and came out with all these crazy forms. And UBC we're doing a box, and of course the campus architect said, we want you to do what we hired you to do, which was that last project. So, they also had a lot of requirements for rainwater protection. So it really actually lent itself that these projecting roofs were actually serving a function, an important function of the building, and at UBC it is important. In terms of getting them built, it is a real challenge because what we do is we set out the elevations with X, Y, and Z coordinates, and we work back from the envelope because ultimately we're trying to achieve, tessellated surfaces that meet as triangles and not quadrilateral, other kind of forms, and that's a real challenge. And I don't know if we've perfected it, but certainly, working in Revit helps, and getting it's the detailer of the secondary steel that's actually really important to be involved in the process, because that really sets the mark. Getting on site, getting them together with your cladding contractor, and having coordination meetings, I think, is what we think works. I mean, some of the photos hide some of the misses that didn't quite work out. So, but all in all, it's just determination to try and get it to work.
I noticed your comment about triple glazing and trying to get so much light and building envelope with obviously trying to go for deep gold or something like that. How are you finding pricing, detailing with that these days? Is it getting better, easier?
When we work in Alberta, we always start with triple glazing, and it does often get bead off the table. I think that we don't need it as much as Ontario now with all the energy modeling. For instance, the Commonwealth, or pardon me, the Ashtonby project. You got to be careful what you show people at the beginning of the project, because you're kind of, that's what you showed everybody. You have to do that now. So we worked really hard with the energy modeler to get the most highly efficient lighting system we could, which was actually these suspended light bars, which were direct, indirect. And I mean, they were the coolest lights, and we liked them. So it made a lot of sense to do that. But that's the way we could make the energy model work. In terms of the cost, it's a challenge to go with triple glazing, absolutely. But if there's a goal on the client side to achieve that, then it can happen, definitely. I mean, we're finding that some of the double glaze systems now can perform pretty close to those, and we're finding even the SSG glazing, glass good, aluminum bad from an energy point of view. So We're finding that bigger sheets of glass and SSG, although can be more expensive, it actually performs better energy-wise.
With that in mind, then, with the scale of the projects that you're working on, do you find that sustainability is high on the client's priority list, or is it still there that's negotiable from a cost point of view?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and all the architects in the room face this on a daily basis. Is everybody, the RFP starts with must be LEED Gold, and then as you move through the VE stages, inevitably those things come up on the chopping block, and who comes out of the client side to champion them, and are we, how do we put our priorities on top of sustainable goals? We're finding that it used to be, my experience was that 5-6 years ago, it was all going to be LEED, it's going to be certified. And it's getting to the point now where we're finding our clients are going to say, you're going to design to LEED, you're going to shadow LEED, but we're not going to certify it. And when anything comes along that we can't justify a payback on, we're not going to do it, even if it costs us LEED points and whatnot. So I found that the clients are just become better educated, more aware of the value of sustainability and certification, and where they don't need to spend that money through experience, and becoming just more pragmatic. Yes?
So tell me the technical challenges you have with opening up your buildings to the exterior. You use some large glass panels. Talk about that a little bit. What kind of systems have you used, and are they being proven to be successful in Canadian climate?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And to be honest, it's only at Regent Park have we opened up an aquatic. That's the first place we've done it, and it's only come online, for the last year, and so far so good. They've only used it this summer, but Toronto through the summer is not a bad situation for operable doors. And in fact, in aquatic environments, we'd always in the past vestibuled all our emergency exits, so we didn't have any moisture. In Edmonton, an exit door with some draft coming through will be a big thing of ice in no time. So our experience in Edmonton, we used triple hung doors on the field house. However, that was a semi-conditioned space, so it didn't have the same kind of interior requirements. It's almost like more of an atrium or vestibule type space, so it could have a less well-performing envelope. And those were double, like IGUs, but it actually got V'd down to single pane glass. But we haven't seen any problems. Certainly, one of our competitors in Vancouver, HughesKon Miller Architects, have been using, this is Vancouver, have been using operable glass on their aquatic facilities for years, and we've always been jealous from the standpoint of Ontario. And so Regent Park was the first one where, and it was because, the council was behind it, the community was behind, we want this to feel like an outdoor space. So we were able to, work through the mechanical with them and come up with a solution mechanically that sounded incredible, and so far so good. Yes?
In terms of, I know you've been speaking a lot towards LEEDs and LEED platinum buildings. Have you had any clients request net zero?
We haven't, and part of the challenge within the recreation realm is that LEED really wasn't well designed for recreation facilities. We are energy. The recreation facilities are really energy intensive. You look at a hockey rink, even if you have hockey and water together, the synergies of that, there's just energy going into those buildings. So we've never had that request. And in fact, I'll be really honest with you, achieving LEED Gold on the Aquatic Center without adding stuff like, let's put some solar panels on, doing it on a very tight budget. I mean, that budget was 25 million and it should have been 35 million. So actually making that pool work was incredible, and then trying to achieve LEED within that budget was very, very difficult. So I'm not the person to ask about net zero. We're just trying to make the most efficient recreation facilities we can. And it's a challenge. You got to work hard to make them, even to get into the gold category can be a challenge.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you all.